What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Crespo FC, and I'm so happy to be back. First ever video being filmed in my new home. As you guys can tell, the background is different. The jersey stand is back. Now we have my first ever jersey framed here. The lighting reflecting on it is pissing me off a little bit, but whatever, we'll figure that out eventually. And I'm really happy. This is now going to be my dedicated space for content creation. Still working on it, still need to set up a little desk here in front of me right now, but trust me, it's gonna look nice and it's gonna make sure that the content that's being made is of better quality, because obviously I want to produce better content and I want to, really dedicate myself to doing this as best as I can. I don't want to be mediocre at this. I want to be very, very good. And so for this first video being filmed in the new home here, I'm going to do the Q&A with you guys. So I got the questions here that you guys all asked on the Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, I will put my Instagram right here so you can see. It's Joshua Crespo _. And so you guys can go follow me on Instagram so that you guys can participate of all the different things that I do on there. Probably eventually I'm going to be doing some giveaways there as well. We did break 50 subscribers, so thank you guys for that. Once I hit 100, I'll do some kind of giveaway for everybody who's following me on Instagram and subscribe to the channel. So with that story that I posted, I got, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I got 10 questions, and 2 of them were the same questions. So let's get going, let's get through it, and this should be a fun video. So the first question comes from Leo Andrade. Favorites to win the World Cup. So I think there's 2 main favorites to win the World Cup. I think the first one is France, without any doubt in my mind. They're the team that has the strongest depth, from goalkeeper to defenders, fullbacks, midfielders, strikers, wingers, whatever position it is. France have at least 2 players in each position that are high quality players. I think they have the strongest squad. Usually the favorites don't always win. The strongest team doesn't always win, because in the last World Cup in 2022 in Qatar, they also still were the strongest squad, and Argentina ended up winning, but obviously France didn't make it to the final. So I think they would be the favorites in the tournament. But to put someone else in the mix as well, I'd also say Spain. I think Spain is also very talented from top to bottom, maybe with not as many names as France, but they still do have a lot of very, 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 very quality players there. They're the current Euro champions, so can't say enough good things about them. And they're continuing a project, and obviously since winning the Euros, they've only had important players like Lamine Yamal develop anymore. And again, Lamine Yamal's the best player at the tournament this summer. Again, you guys know my opinion. He's the best player in the world. So for him to be on Spain, again, to me, that just gives them an edge as well. So those, to me, would be the 2 favorites for the World Cup, France and Spain. Let's go on to the second one. This one comes from Simon. Simon was one of my players when I used to coach at Everett High. Shout out to you. Thank you for asking this question, Simon. And Simon asked, no Italy in the World Cup. So it's a statement / question. But I'm thankful that you asked this question so I can touch on it a little bit. I thought about doing a video just on that specifically, but obviously didn't get around to that. But no Italy in the World Cup, yes. Unfortunately, no Italy in the World Cup. So sad for all of the Italian Americans, and there's so many that live here in the United States, especially here in the Northeast where I'm from, Boston, Jersey, and New York. So many Italian Americans, and unfortunately they won't be able to see Italy play in their own backyard. So sad. Awful situation going on with the Italian Football Federation, the FIGC. And the good news is that Gabriele Gravina, who was the president, actually just resigned. And so that's a good sign. He will not be ahead of the federation anymore. He was very, very incompetent. So many bad decisions being made. They've missed 2 World Cups under his regime, and so it's a good thing that he's going. Hopefully the structural changes that Italy need to go through can happen now with him being gone. I've heard some people asking for Maldini to be the new president. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I think that could be interesting to see. I think they just need to be careful to not fall in that trap of just appointing ex-players and making sure that there's people who are actually qualified to be there. Not that Maldini isn't, because obviously he built the Milan that won the last Scudetto. So he does have some experience in at least squad building. So he does have some credentials to do it. But I mean, just in general, I feel like on the bench for this game against Bosnia, they had Gattuso, Buffon, Bonucci. like, what really were those guys all doing there? No hate to any of them, but I feel like sometimes they just kind of throw people in there to almost be like a shield to protect the directors and whatnot. But it's so sad to see. Again, Italy, growing up, were one of the best national teams, and the Serie A was one of the reasons that I absolutely fell in love with this game. And so it's sad as a fan of Italian football, both the national team and the league. It's very sad to see, but hopefully change is coming with the switch in presidency. Next question is coming from Jonathan Silva, and he asked me, what would be the right team for Brazil to play against Croatia? Now, obviously, he asked this question before that game on Tuesday between Brazil and Croatia, so obviously I can't answer what the ideal lineup would be for there, but what I am going to do is what I would think is the ideal lineup for the Brazilian national team in general, and this is a great question. Thanks for this question, Jonathan. So I have a little bit of a crazy idea that I think that Brazil should try out a three-back, just because I feel like Brazil doesn't have any quality fullbacks, and we have a large amount of good center backs in Marquinhos, Gabriel Magalhães, Eder Militao, Alexandro, who is the one from Lille, Thiago Silva, who even at 40 years old, in my opinion, still has a lot to give. I know a lot of people think I'm crazy for this, but I legitimately think that he has a lot to bring, a lot of experience, a lot of leadership, and especially since the fourth center back usually doesn't play. But not to get off on a tangent, I think we have a lot of high quality center backs, not enough good fullbacks. So I would try the three back to see how it works, but Ancelotti's not going to do that. So I'm not going to give here a lineup with three defenders because I know it's not going to happen. So in a little more of a realistic prediction and what I would do if I was coaching the national team, I would go with Alisson in goal. I have my gripes with him. I think he's obviously played multiple World Cups for Brazil, and I feel like in the big games he's never really come up with big saves, but he still is the best goalie. I don't feel comfortable with Ederson. I really don't think that he can give that security in the back, so I'd still go with Alisson in goal. I would play Militao at right back, which he has played before. He doesn't play it at Real Madrid, but obviously I think he can do a job there, so I would play Militao at right back. The center back duo is pretty straightforward, Marquinhos and Gabriel Magalhães, and then at left back, again, there's a huge hole. Do you go with Douglas Santos, who's been playing but is a little underwhelming? Do you go with Alexandro? Do you go with Carlos Augusto? In my opinion, I'd go with Alexandro. I think he's just the safest bet. But honestly, between Douglas Santos and Alexandro, it's not that big of a difference. So either one of them would be fine. Then going into the midfield, the formation is going to be a 4-2-3-1. Two midfielders. I would personally go with Casemiro. And here's another out of the park prediction. I would go with Danilo. I think Bruno Guimarães is very, very good, but I don't think Bruno Guimarães complements Casemiro in the midfield as much as Danilo does. Danilo obviously scored the first goal against Croatia, and I think he just offers a little bit more energy and being able to step forward. I was actually having a conversation about this with my friends in a group chat, so shout out to Lucas. He was someone that brought that up as well, and he was the first one to kind of bring that idea up to me, and I do agree with him. I do think that Danilo complements Casemiro better. And obviously he's not that big of a name, but as you guys will see moving forward, I'm not going for the biggest names. I legitimately think that in the national team, it's not about who's the biggest name, it's about who's able to perform. The national team and club are so different, and we can see that with Rafinha and Vinicius Jr., who are amazing for Barca and Real, but they can't really perform for the national team. So I think it's about putting who's able to produce for the national team there, and that's why I would go with Danilo and Casemiro. In the 10 spot, I think you can go with two different players. You can go with Estevão or Matheus Cunha. I don't think there's really an out-and-out, like, long shot best 10 there. There's a couple of people who maybe could do a job. Obviously, Neymar, I don't think he has the capability to bring the national team what they need. I think physically he's not there. If he was, then that would obviously be his spot. But again, I wouldn't even call him up. So I would play Matheus Cunha there. On the left wing, I would play Vini. As much as Vini has not been producing for the national team, I think nobody else has gone out and played left wing well enough to the point that you can bench him, so let's try to insist with him a little bit more. On the right wing, I would play Luis Henrique. Again, another person not really known, played on Botafogo, went to Zenit, never played in the big five. Well, actually, he played for Real Betis, so he has played in the top 5 leagues before, but at least he's not currently in, and he's never done particularly well in the Big Five leagues, but you can see he does so much more for the national team than Rafinha does. I would also accept Estevão, but honestly, yeah, I would actually play Estevão in the middle. Even though he plays out wide for Chelsea, he can do a role in that 10 position. So Estevão would be my 10. Luis Enrique would be out wide on the right, and up top, I think it has to be Endrick. It has to be Endrick. I think you need a 9 there. I think João Pedro is a very good player, but he's never scored for the national team. And I think Endrick is, again, he's a guy, he goes in, he's not fearful. And I think that against Croatia, he showed Ancelotti, he's like, you need to play me. You need to give me more minutes. So again, from top to bottom, my Brazil lineup: Alisson, the back line, Eder Militão right back, center backs Marquinhos and Gabriel Magalhães, and Alexandro at left back. The midfield duo, the pivot, Danilo and Casemiro, with Estevão in the 10, right wing Luis Henrique, left wing Vinicius Jr., up top Endrick. Awesome. Let's go on to the next question. This question comes from Nick Oliveira. He asked me, if you can choose any position with any players, what would be the best team for you? And actually, my friend Mr. Rose, he also asked the same question, dream starting 11. So I'm going to answer these both now. I'll give you a dream 11 of mine, not necessarily on who I think the best players ever were, but kind of just players that I enjoyed, players that I really enjoyed watching. And so in goal, for me, Cássio Ramos, an idol for me from Corinthians. The performance he put in at the 2012 Club World Cup final against Chelsea was insane. So for me, Cássio is going to be in goal. The two center backs, one of them has to be Thiago Silva. I think Thiago Silva is criminally underrated, honestly, even in this generation. I think he is the best center back I've ever seen play. I think a lot of people actually put Sergio Ramos over him, which I think is a little not necessarily absurd, because Sergio Ramos was amazing as well, but obviously Thiago Silva to me was better. Next to him, I put Chiellini. Chiellini is a guy that I absolutely love. Following Juventus, being a fan of Juventus, he's just a guy that was awesome. Not the most technical player ever, but just the heart, knew how to defend. So Thiago Silva and Chiellini will be my two center backs. At left back and right back, these are two ones that are a little tougher. We don't necessarily follow fullbacks as much, but at right back, I'll put Reece James. I love Reece James. I think Reece James has everything that you need in being a awesome fullback. Unfortunately, he's been hindered by injuries, but Reece James would be my right back. And then for left back, let's say Roberto Carlos. Obviously, Roberto Carlos, and he played a little bit on Corinthians as well. So I'll go with Roberto Carlos. In the midfield, I'll go with Pirlo as one of the center midfielders. Again, majestic player, midfield maestro. Absolutely love him so much. Next to Pirlo, I'm going to put Paulinho. Paulinho, who played for Brazil in 2 World Cups. An awesome center midfielder. So good. Very underrated. He played a lot in China, so he kind of goes under the radar a bit. But so Pirlo and Paulinho. That's hilarious. As the 10, I guess I'll do a 4-2-3-1 as well, or like a 4-4-2. In the 10, I'm going to go with Dybala. Dybala is one of the reasons I became a Juve fan, and I just love Dybala. Another player who, unfortunately, with all of the injuries he's had, so tough for him. Left wing, none other than Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't think that needs any explanation at all. On the right wing, I'm going to throw in a very recent player, Lamine Yamal, who's been a player who I've been absolutely falling in love with. And then up top, I'm going to go with Carlos Tevez. He played for the 2 clubs of my heart, both Corinthians and for Juventus. So he just ticks all the boxes. And he was like the first player in 2005, when he played for Corinthians, in 2006 as well, that I just looked at. I was like, wow, this guy is insane. This guy is different. So again, those aren't necessarily who I think the best players are, but just players that I love. So recapping, we got Cássio in goal. We have Reece James at right back, center backs Thiago Silva and Chiellini, left back Roberto Carlos, midfield Pirlo and Paulinho, Dybala in the 10, Cristiano Ronaldo out to the left, Lamine Yamal on the right, and Carlos Tevez up top. You can see a lot of the Juve and Corinthians bias in there, but obviously it's my dream 11, so that's to be expected. Going on to the next question, we have the same question from my good friend Guilherme Fernandes, straight from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Best English teacher out there. If you're looking for an English teacher, he's the man. Guilherme Fernandes and Elisa Rodriguez, they also asked me the same question, CR7 or Messi, who's better? I think from my last answer, who I put in my Dream 11, you can 100% already tell who I think is better. I'm actually wearing a Newell's Old Boy shirt here, which is Messi's boyhood club, but to me, it's Ronaldo. I just remember the first ever Champions League final I watched, and like understood what was going on was 2008 in Moscow. Um, Obviously, that was Manchester United versus Chelsea. Ronaldo scores the header, and he obviously actually misses the penalty shoot in the penalty kick in the shootout. But they ended up winning, and he goes on to win the Ballon d'Or. And just him at United, a very skillful winger who still had a crazy knack for scoring goals. He's one of the main reasons I fell in love with the sport as well. So for me, CR7 better than Messi. Obviously, I'm not stupid. Messi is insane, and I do like Messi as well. I think if you love the sport, no matter who you like between the two, you just can't hate one of them because they're both amazing. In my opinion, they're both like, again, I think Messi and Ronaldo are the two greatest players in the history of the sport. I think nobody ever has done, and it'll be hard to replicate the success that they've had. They played at the top level for 10 plus years. They're obviously still playing today, obviously in Saudi Arabia and here in the US, so obviously not the highest level anymore, but they, for over 10 years, were putting in ridiculous numbers, like 40 plus goals per season. Ronaldo at United and Madrid, and then even at Juve, continuing on, going back to United and scoring as many goals as he did in the Premier League. And then Messi, obviously, majority of the time with Barcelona, and then having a stint at PSG, which was, but that was just a horribly constructed team. But doing what he did, scoring 92 goals, I believe it was, but over 90 goals in a calendar year in 2012, like, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. Both of them, to me, are the greatest players in the history of the sport. But my heart is with El Bicho, CR7. All right, let's go on to the next one. We almost done here. So I have this question here from my friend Zeke. He's asking me, who's a bigger club without speaking with your heart? São Paulo, which is his team, or Corinthians? I mean, this question is obvious for me. Corinthians is obviously bigger than São Paulo, and I obviously can't take my heart out of it. I'm always gonna make analysis with my heart. But with that being said, obviously São Paulo is a huge club. They have 3 Libertadores titles, 3 Club World Cup titles. It wasn't called the Club World Cup back then, but 3 world titles, they call it in Brazil, Mundiais. And obviously they're a huge club. Huge club. They have multiple Brasileiros as well. They won 3 Brazilian league titles in a row. They are a huge club, but titles is not the only thing that matters. Titles is not the thing that makes you the biggest club. It's not, and I have that opinion, and I don't just apply it to my club in Brazil, Corinthians. I think you can see it around the world, and I'll just give you an example of what I mean. I think, first of all, Corinthians has 2 Mundiais, 2 world titles. People always debate that, but I'd have to do a whole another video on that. But so we only have 1 world title less than São Paulo. We have 2 Libertadores less, but we have more Brazilian cups. We have more Brazilian leagues than São Paulo. So in some aspects, we have more titles than São Paulo. And not only that, but this is the biggest thing for me, we have a lot more fans than São Paulo. And Corinthians as a club is more spoken about in the media. Just the media coverage on Corinthians is insane. So there's more media coverage by Corinthians. There's more fans. We're more talked about. If you just see the things that Corinthians has done, invading the Maracanã Stadium in the 70s to play against Fluminense. Corinthians is from São Paulo, and they went all the way to Rio, and they put more fans in the Maracanã Stadium than Fluminense, and they beat a better Fluminense team. This is in the 70s. What Corinthians did in Tokyo in 2012, when they put over 30,000 people, I believe it is, in Yokohama Stadium for the final against Chelsea. And you can just go back, look it up if you're interested. You can see the Japanese people were like, what the heck is going on? What is going on? Like, you'd think that you were in São Paulo with the amount of Corinthians fans that was there. And so Corinthians is a much, much bigger thing than just a club. Corinthians is a passion. It's a movement. And the pull, the gravity that Corinthians has with their fans is something that for São Paulo, unfortunately, they just don't have. They just don't have. So if football was only about winning titles and whoever had more titles was the bigger club, then yeah, you can say São Paulo is bigger, but that's not what football is about. Football is about so much more than that. And for that reason, Corinthians is bigger than São Paulo. I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I legitimately believe it. And again, it's not even just because I'm a fan. If you just look what Corinthians does, what they are as a movement, it's insane, honestly. I won't say there's no other club in the world just because I've never really seen anything else, but there could be. But it's like nothing else in the world that I've seen. What Corinthians brings out of its fans. Let's move on to the next one. There's only two more here, and I don't want this video to be too long. Next question here is from Luis, and he asked me, why am I so in love with football? This is a great question, and I catch myself thinking about it a lot. Sometimes I'm like, what the heck? Why am I so invested? Why am I so dedicated into a sport like this? But so I would say I think that it's a lot more than just a sport. Football is not just a game. It's not just 22 man or woman or whatever running, chasing a ball. Like I was just talking about Corinthians, I think football is culture. Football is politics. Football is religion. Not that it is a religion itself, but it involves all these things. It involves politics. It involves religion. It involves identity. And just to give you an example of that, when I'm talking about religion, you look in Scotland, the Old Firm derby between Rangers and Celtic. It's not just because they're the most successful clubs in Scotland. It's also because of the divide between the Catholics in Scotland, which is Celtic, and the Protestants in Scotland, which are Rangers. So it's not just a battle on the field. It's also, again, like a battle between the Catholic Scottish people and the Protestant Scottish people. So it involves so much more. It's a movement. It brings people together. And me personally, I've just had so many positive experiences with it. Obviously, I grew up playing, so a lot of my best friends have come from playing. Some of my best memories as a child come from it. Playing in high school, just so many different awesome memories. I remember my junior year of high school, Medford High School, where I played for, versus Acton Boxborough in the first round of the playoffs. We won on penalty kicks, and the fans just invaded the field. There's a huge mob on the field. Like, those are things that I'll remember for the rest of my life, and obviously the game was something that gave me that. But more recently as well, I've felt a lot that a lot of people believe, again, and I'm a person of faith, and I truly believe that we can use the things that we have passion for, whether it be football like me, whether it be music like my wife who sings, whatever it is, we can use these things as an opportunity to glorify God through the different things we do. And so more recently as well, one of the things that has been on my heart is, using football, using my passion, using my love for the game as something that is going to glorify God. So that's been on my heart a lot recently as well. So I guess there's a mix of different things that made me fall in love with this game. And now for the last one. I left this one for last because I think it's the best question, because I think it's the most complex one. Not that the other questions weren't good, but I really like this one, and it's something that I think about a lot. So this question comes from Edward, and he asked me, do you think the old generation of soccer players is better than the ones from 2010 and up? And he expanded on the question saying, even though obviously the older generation wasn't as developed tactically and physically as today. And I love this question. And my answer to that is 100% yes. I think that the old generation of players are better, but I think that there's a very specific range of years where I think the best players played. And you said 2010 and up. I think 2010 and a little bit past it actually still involves a lot of the best players. So it's a wide range, but I think the best players ever played between the 90s and right up until 2015. I think that era, obviously there's more than one era there. It's pretty wide because obviously you have the 90s and then you have the early 2000s, which is 2000 to 2010, and then it gets the first few years of the 2010s going on. But those 15 years from 1990 all the way to 2015, I think that it was, again, it could be that moving on, it's different, but I think that time frame is where there were the best players ever. Obviously, the game has evolved physically. The game is a lot faster. The game is a lot more tactically sound. It's a chess match now, but I'm talking about specifically the players. Obviously, the game was a lot slower back then. You watch it, and sometimes people will say like, "Oh, but he's playing against farmers. He's doing this. Look at how slow this game is. If today's players played back then, they would do so much better," and this, that. But it's very hard to compare against generations because of that exact reason. The game was a lot slower back then, but there also wasn't any VAR. There also wasn't all this technology that helps the players. The field conditions weren't as good. There's just so many different factors that make it so difficult to compare a player today to a player way back then. And so I'm talking about specifically the quality, the individual quality of the players. And I have this debate a lot with my friend Lucas, and he thinks that the players today are a lot better than they were in the past. But I just don't agree, because I feel like, yes, the players today, maybe they know how to trap and pass the ball a lot better. There's not as many players who are just not technically sound, because again, the speed of the game is so much faster that if you're not able to move the ball quickly, you're probably going to be pushed out of the game. Whereas back in the days, you saw some players, a lot of the times defenders, who weren't really great at moving the ball. But just because most players are better technically, my bad, doesn't mean that the overall players are better. I would say that today the floor of the players is higher. I think in the past, the players that were like the worser players, yes, they're in the past, the worst players were not as bad as the worst players are today. So the floor has risen today. But I think when it comes to the ceiling, I think the ceiling in the past is much higher than the ceiling today. So the best players today are not as good as the best players in the past. But the worst players in the past were much worse than the worst players today, if that makes sense. But again, from 1990 to 1999, and then 2000 to 2010, and then 2011 to 2015, I think in that era, we had the best players ever. Best players ever. And the 2006 World Cup was the World Cup with the best players. If you look at that World Cup was stacked. You look at Brazil, you look at Italy, you look at Germany, you look at even Spain, who they were starting their project to become the dominant national team that they were today. But you just look at the names at that World Cup. You look at the African countries, you look at the Asian countries. In that World Cup, it was just insane the level of talent. Look it up, and you'll see just the sheer amount of talent in that World Cup. And I think that a big reason why this happened is because the game has been so tactically evolved. It kind of suppresses a lot of those more creative players. And that's why I say it goes in 2010, because I think between 2011 and 2015, I think that's like the peak of Messi and Ronaldo. So I think they're the greatest players ever, but they're playing until 2015 at their peak, even past that, but maybe not necessarily their peak. I think peak Ronaldo is probably that 2015, 2014, 2015, and Messi, again, he was still a beast in that page, but again, 2012, 2013, Messi was insane. So I think it goes on, and I think where the level of the player starts dwindling down a little bit is very specifically when Pep Guardiola goes to Manchester City. And I think that because once he started moving to Manchester City, obviously he started implementing his ideas already when he was at Barcelona, and then he went to Bayern. But I think once he makes that shift to the Premier League, that's when everybody tries to start copying him. I didn't think everybody was copying him. Obviously, he did everything he did with Barcelona. He won the treble, and then Jose Mourinho comes in and beats him and wins the treble, playing a completely different style of football. So not everybody was trying to copy Guardiola. But once he goes to the Prem and he starts having the success that he had in the Prem, I feel like everybody was just like, oh my gosh, we have to copy him, we have to copy him, we have to copy him. And then because of that, the game became so tactically rigid that it started kind of pushing those flair players out. But I could go on for days. Obviously, if you haven't seen my video where I asked the question, is the beautiful game dying? That was one of the topics that I touched on. But I could go on for hours about this topic. But to give you a final answer, just very simple, yes, I do think that the players before 2010 were better than the players today. And that concludes it. Let me just make sure I didn't leave any questions behind, but I'm pretty sure that was the last one. Yep, that was the last one. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, 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 please follow me on Instagram, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, and hype it. Please, if you guys could hype it. If you're watching on mobile, there is a function to hype the video. Hype points help me so much because they help people see the video, help it reach people. It shows YouTube that people like this type of content. So I really appreciate that. Again, also share the video with all your friends. Subscribe. Remember, at 100 subscribers, I'll do some type of giveaway. But thank you guys so much for watching this one. God bless you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.